Hi, everyone. I'd like to do a shout out to our sponsor, Baco Diagnostics. Early detection is the single most important factor in improving patient outcomes. The Baco Diagnostics team recognizes how impactful a podiatric physician can be and remains committed to supporting you in your role as the first line of defense in diagnosing conditions of the lower extremity. Thanks to the unwavering support of their clients, Baco Diagnostics has been able to give back to the podiatric community for 16 years by providing podiatric educational resources and advocating for the position. Baco Diagnostics, helping podiatric physicians keep America on its feet. If you have not yet had the opportunity to utilize Baco Diagnostics services, get started today by sending an email to corporaterelations@bacodiagnostics.com. The first 50 podiatry offices who request a starter kit will receive a Dean's Chat mug. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. Once again, I am joined by my co-host, Dr. Joanna Ritchie. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
Doing great. How was your weekend at ACFAS?
Oh, man, it was absolutely outstanding. I got to connect with our guest today, who I had connected with before, but our fun connecting history actually kind of began at ACFAS a couple years ago. So some fun things for us to discuss today.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Well, I'd like to introduce from the Bay Area, Dr. Krcal. Craig, welcome to Dean's Chat.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on. I think what you guys are doing is awesome. We were just talking about before we started recording how, popular podcasts have become, and I think this is a really good opportunity for our field to grow and make awesome connections. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And I think you're right. Joe and I have been doing these interviews for the last couple of years, and it seems like every time we turn around, there's a new superstar in our profession, or there's some connections being made that hadn't been made previously. And sometimes we get to play a little part in that. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, I'm gonna take. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
No, I was just gonna say, if you don't mind, we'll go first names: Craig and Joanne and Jeff, and take over, Joe.
Perfect.
All right, Craig. So we're going to kind of go through your CV as we have our interview today, but just a couple brief introduction moments for you. So Dr. Krcal did his residency program with Kaiser San Francisco, and that's how we originally first met, but also went on to do a fellowship program with the Core Institute here in Arizona. So we've had a couple different interesting areas how our paths have crossed. Prior to that, though, you got your bachelor's degree in biology at Xavier University, and then also went to the Kent State College of Podiatric Medicine. I'd love for you to start, if you can just tell us a little bit about how you found out about podiatric medicine and what your journey was to finding the profession.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's one of the most common questions. It's always one of the most unique questions and answers we get, being in our field. So for me, I grew up playing sports. I feel like that's a very common kind of introduction to injuries in the world of orthopedics. And I had a couple of really awesome sports orthopedists along the way who helped me through a couple of injuries. So I always knew I kind of wanted to go into the world of orthopedics, and I didn't know to what extent early on. And then as I went through, high school and college, I started running track, and I got very into a very obscure sport called pole vault. So if you guys know what that is, that became my life for the better part of 7 years from high school into college. And in that process, I actually had a Jones fracture on my right foot. So I got exposed to a little foot and ankle surgery myself. And that was pretty life-changing for me. As we know, is kind of like one of those, well, we can cast it and, we'll see how long it takes to heal, or I can, fix it and we'll get you running and playing track again and everything. So that was a really interesting experience to have that kind of firsthand. And then as I, matured through college, I found out about podiatry from a friend who was kind of considering the same routes as me, taking the MCAT, applying to medical school, also considering other things like physical therapy. And so I heard about the profession, and we had a really good talk about what it could present in my life. And so I shadowed a couple of people in Cleveland, where I'm from, as I took 2 years to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my life and really make sure I chose something I could see myself pursuing. And then I really enjoyed the diversity of it all. And you get to talking to people about lifestyle. And somebody said it best to me. It's kind of one of those professions that you get out of it what you put in. And for somebody like me who's from Cleveland, Ohio, kind of like a blue collar background, all I ever really knew was that kind of idea where if you work hard enough and you have a goal, as long as you keep heading toward that goal, good things will come of it, as long as you kind of keep a positive attitude and just keep going. So I ended up applying to podiatry school after that, and kind of the rest is history. Brings, all the training in modern day to light. So.
Absolutely. Ooh, I'm totally going to bring Jeff into this because you said a couple of the key buzzwords that make all the buzzers go off. So Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Well, the first thing I was going to do, Joe, is go down the rabbit hole of pole vaulting.
No, it's one thing to talk about.
Well, so Craig, I'm going to date myself here. I remember the days of Sergey Bubka. I mean, we're talking like 80s or something.
Yeah.
And so I've got a couple questions about pole vaulting, because I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are naive, as I am, to pole vaulting. What makes a good pole vaulter? How do you train for pole vaulting? And then a follow-up later is like, have technologies changed? Do the poles change? Do techniques change? Like, give us a little story there, because I'm curious.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a bit of insanity that goes along with the sport. I had a friend that we gave a ride home, and his older brother actually was on the verge of breaking our school record. And so I played football in high school, and in the spring, everybody kind of runs track. And so you kind of get to the point where it's like, well, you can either hang out with the pole vault crew and do a lot less running, or you can go run the whole 2 hours or whatever it is. And so it's very enticing, and it's a very laid back community once you are around it enough. It's a sport that really allows you to just show your personality, because it's considered kind of a team sport with the whole track team, but it's more or less individual. And what makes a good pole vaulter is I think somebody who is like almost hyper focused, somebody who can really nitpick little technique things. Like we would go back and watch film on ourselves. And this is back when I was like renting a camcorder from the library because we didn't have cell phone videos. So now I'm really starting to feel older as time has gone on. But so it's a lot of studying, and then from the physical standpoint, it's a lot of pull-ups and core strength and sprinting. So it's really just like general athleticism that you kind of shape over the years. So as you start, it's a lot less important, X, Y, and Z. And then as you get older, all those little tiny details become way more important than the physical training. So it was a really fun sport to keep growing. And most pole vaulters don't actually get to their peak until they're like almost in their 30s, which is interesting, just because the sport it's so detail oriented. And so I guess it all kind of makes sense in hindsight for me. But yeah, it was a really pivotal moment in my life. It got me through college. I ended up getting scholarship after being a walk-on. So it really changed my life.
So there's lots of technique, but then you also just got to let it go when you're performing, right? So trained in. And
once you step up, you kind of have to just let it. It's like a reflex. You just kind of have to do it. Yeah, you don't think as much.
And then how have the poles changed over the years? Different composites and things, I imagine.
It was different material. If you go back, it used to be like steel, then they went to bamboo, and once they figured out like the carbon fiber world with woven like synthetics, and so there's a lot of different companies. I think there's probably 4 or 5 companies that make them, and they each kind of offer something different, and a lot of it comes down to like how quickly the pole unbends, like the speed at which it unbends. So the technology is fascinating.
One last question. So is it like riding a bike? Could you go out and pole vault right now, or would you have to train a little bit?
I would probably, I would definitely train. It just seems more and more dangerous as I get older. But it's something that I could do a lot. I could do a lot of. Would I want to do it? Maybe not as much anymore.
Gotcha. Hey, whatever pays for school, I get it. That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, thanks for letting me go down the rabbit hole here.
No, and this is so interesting, actually. So, yeah. So, fun fact: I did high jump and hurdles in junior high, and enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I enjoyed it. I really loved high jump. I hated hurdles. That's really what it
Sure.
comes down to. So then in high school, I did it. But to your point, it was the running and track, and I was like, this is not for me. I wanted to be a runner. I tried so hard. I should have looked at pole vaulting because that's very
Yep.
similar, or maybe not very similar, but similar enough to high jump that maybe that could have rescued me from all the running.
Exactly. On a hot summer day, you see the pole vaulters laying down on the pads while everyone's running circles all day. So that's what
Yeah,
draws me.
my body was not built to be a runner, but actually, and on this, I'd love to piggyback a little bit because something that I also didn't know about you, but now knowing your personality, you were a coach for the
Yep.
pole vaulting. Can you talk a little
Yep.
bit about what that experience was like in terms of your style? How did you learn how to coach and what that experience kind of was like?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing that really I think has taken me far into the teaching side of medicine. Kind of thinking back to where you started and knowing the journey along the way and being able to relate that. I think that's the hard part of coaching. So yeah, I had a good opportunity to train actually at an all-girls high school. I had a friend while I was taking some time off between undergrad and medical school, and they're like, "Hey, we're trying to find a pole vault coach. So do you think you could, donate some time?" And at the time, I was just working some jobs to, make ends meet and study for the MCAT. So I was like, "Yeah, sure. This is a fun thing to do. It's something I still have a lot of passion for." And so I did it for 5 years through podiatry school. I was lucky enough to, kind of work with my schedule and schooling to figure all that out. And at first, it was very awkward. There were so many factors. One, it was like an all girls school, and I went to an all guys high school. So, like, that in itself is, very different. And then trying to relate to people that age again, where you're, heading in one direction and they're heading in another direction just in life in general. So, being able to relate to people, I think, is like the number one takeaway that I would say I had with coaching, and like matching people's energy. I think that goes so far, not only in coaching, but also in teaching residents and students, but also in day-to-day patient encounters. Walking into a room and having that difficult conversation versus somebody who's doing really well post-operatively. Those conversations are so different, and they can be back to back. And so that's what you kind of learn with coaching. You learn people's little nuances, and then obviously all of the support that you can provide people. Nowadays, I still keep in touch with a handful of people that I coached, and it's more like life coaching now. And my favorite part is them just reaching out to me and telling me about like amazing updates that they're doing. A couple of them are, off to medical school. And so keeping in touch and talking about that journey, I keep getting to live that journey with them. So that's been really fun. I think it's the mentoring that you really take with you after coaching. You kind of forget about some of the accolades and all the meets and everything, but the people obviously is what makes coaching. So that's my favorite part of it.
Oh, there are so many things that I love that you touched on there. But before I take you down a side street of that, Jeff, did
Yeah.
you have anything that you wanted to add on the coaching part of?
Oh, I just think it's fascinating because sometimes when you're a coach, you're building people up, and sometimes you're trying to slow them down a little bit. And it's so individualized, especially in a sport, individualized sport. So we can touch more on that as we go. But what I was thinking, Joe, is maybe I'll give a shout out to our sponsor.
Sure.
All right, let's hear it for Baco Diagnostics. We all know that early detection is the most important determination in improving patient outcomes. Baco Diagnostics remains committed to supporting you in your role as the first line of defense in diagnosing lower extremity pathologies. Baco Diagnostics, helping podiatric physicians keep America on its feet. Craig, you're young enough to remember the days as a student, resident, probably even as a fellow in practice. Baco supports our profession to the hilt. So we'd like to give them a shout out during our podcast as a sponsor.
So I'd love to take some of that you were just talking about too, with the coaching and the mentorship. And I'm curious if, as you have gone, because you have had incredible training at some of the top, residency programs, again, bias, take it for what it's worth, and then a top fellowship program as well. Having had the opportunity to be a mentor and coach to someone, as you have engaged in your own being the mentee version, has it shaped the way that you look at those relationships, or has it had any impact on you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think every time you meet somebody, especially when you're going through training, there's such a diversity in everyone's story. And so that's what I've always kind of come to do, is to pick their brains and learn their story and see how they got to where they are, because ultimately that's one of the most valuable things that they can give you, is knowing how to navigate this system and this really journey of life. Because a lot of times you start with talking medicine and you walk out the door together talking about life. So that's what I'd say is probably what I value most: the connections I made with people, and being really connected with them.
I love that. And, it's funny, as different people come in and out of your life, you can learn something from everyone. And
Mhm.
to circle back to how we first actually were introduced, it was the alumni event, Jeff, for our program. And, at ACFAS, how the different groups will get together. And at this phase, I'm far removed from the young resident graduates. So there were a lot of people that I didn't really know there. But I'm sitting there with Christy and another one of our faculty who was a big influence and mentor in my life. And we're basically having this like back and forth with the residents. And were you a second year at the time, Craig?
Yeah, it was.
Or okay, I'm like trying to remember like where you would have been in all this. And so like, we're kind of going back and forth, and it's like good cop, bad cop. And I mean, again, I have two settings, on and off, and my on is like all on, right? And so I have just come off of my own experience of like figuring out purpose and meaning and joy in what I do. So I am like up here, right? And so so we're just going back and forth and like here, talking about the book Outliers, and I'm like, you are all amazing and you're going to go out and change the world and you have something only you can bring. And they're like, you need to have a podcast. And I was like,
Yes.
no, 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 no. That's not my thing. And so here we are, Craig. You guys were the driving force. You put it into the universe, and here it is.
I, yeah, we talked it into existence, and now it's
Yes.
very obvious because you're very good at it. So I'm happy it all
Well,
came to
thank
fruition.
you. There you go. So would you comment a little bit about some of the mentors that you have had in your life, and maybe a couple, you don't have to go into like, a huge depth, but maybe some of the key things that you've learned from a couple different people.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to kind of go, period by period in my life. So I feel like I can always relate back to an experience I had, and it's something that'll just click and remind me of somebody. And as a side note, for people who might be beginning their journey or want to, think about how to stay connected with people, I think those are amazing opportunities to just send a text message, or, make a phone call or send an email and just say, hey, I was thinking about this. Thank you for teaching me this, or thanks for helping me through that hard time. I've done that many times, and I think it's the easiest way to keep in touch with people. So that's just a little side note for me. But definitely my high school pole vault coach helped me realize that, there's bigger things in life than what you're focusing on. So that's something that I always take to heart with me. In high school, I think you can be, kind of the serious focus type, or the, kind of goofy obnoxious type at an all boys high school. And I was definitely on the more serious side of things. And pole vault and my coach really made it like amazingly fun, and made you realize like you can be very focused when you need to be, and then the rest of the time you should absolutely not be focused. You should really enjoy the ride, and make connections with people. So that is something I always took through college. More coaches along the way that helped me kind of figure out how to balance work life. I think if you're a college athlete, it is a daunting journey, especially in the D1 world, where you're traveling on the weekends, or, going for 4 or 5 days. You're still taking exams. And now it feels very normal. Like seeing, a bunch of patients in the morning and then getting on a flight and going to act fast. Like, I feel like I've just been doing it for so long. And so those mentors have helped me in that way. And then I'd say the next kind of step that, I really think of is in residency, all the amazing people. I mean, I don't have to speak too much. Dr. Ritchie, a lot of the people here, and you were colleagues with a lot of them. They are some of the most supportive people I've ever met. And it's kind of in a similar light. Everybody that we work with along the way has been very supportive, and amazing surgeons and physicians and just people in general. And finding, that switch, like you said, that you can turn on when you need to be, focused or really involved in somebody's care, or know when to just sit back and ask somebody how they're doing. As a resident, I feel like sometimes you're not as heard. So a lot of the people here will just check in with you, and usually it would be mid-surgery and you would never expect it. And so that's always a very interesting time to talk about life. But otherwise, so many people would just go out of their way to check in on you. And then in fellowship, Dr. Ryan Scott, Dr. Melissa Galley, Dr. Jeff Holmes, and Dr. Threshi Dupa, all those people have amazing connections and amazing stories. And so again, it for me has always been about, the people and connecting, and everyone going out of the way to say, hey, how can I support you? It's amazing, the farther and farther along you go, and the higher you get in training, how selfless people are. And so that to me has always been pretty profound and amazing. Sorry, that was a lot. That's period by period in my mind. So,
Craig, I was going to go back just a little bit to your experience at Kaiser as a resident. You and Joe are like, well, we know who they are. How about doing some shout outs? Let's hear
sure,
about some of those attendees. They're unbelievable.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I think the last few decades, it's always been Dr. Schuberth, and he had such an amazing impact on just the field of podiatry and the way we view our profession. And so if, there's people out there who are younger, not aware of who he is, he really kind of set the stage for so much of the, more advanced reconstructive ideas and ability for podiatrists to go pursue different avenues in our field. So, he's somebody who we all looked up to, especially as a student, in the OR room, kind of standing in the corner, just trying not to mess anything up. He's somebody you look to who really just changed my view of podiatry as a whole. Christy King has done an amazing job with our residency. One of the most selfless people I've ever met, who's always checking in on people and helping the residents out and making sure they get what they need to keep succeeding. Joey Dickinson, he's the chief over here at Oakland, is always been somebody who really tests you to kind of be better, talk about, different parts of your life, marriage, or even, housing, and then everything in between with podiatry. Dr. Sandeep Patel, he's the chief out in the DSA. He's one of the hardest workers I think I've worked with, which is something I always can assimilate to. Just somebody who can, look at the day and just shake his head and say it's what needs to be done. And Dave Coleman, I could probably just go down the list and name all of them and how they've changed my life or changed my view of things. And then I share an office with Dr. Pollard, who is like a research guru. And so conversations with him over the years, and just, this place is filled with great people. So I could go on and on about it.
Joe, I just think it's great because our students are always talking about clerkships and going to the Bay Area, and it's always fun for students to listen to these episodes and then put faces to the names when they're at clerks and things. So thank you, Craig. That's just a great background.
Absolutely. And I love your shout out for Dr. Pollard, because I think he was a huge influence for me as a resident. And, it's like the quiet ones that sometimes have such profound impact. And how fun that you get to share an office with them. And actually that's a beautiful transition to your current role now as a faculty attending at the Kaiser San Francisco program. and you are located in Oakland. What has that experience or transition been like, going from being on the training side to now being a practicing surgeon in your own right, but also now teaching and training residents?
Yeah, it's kind of like I don't know if you've heard the saying same but different. It's kind of like it's all the same, you're in the same place, you see the same people, and you're almost doing the same thing, but it is night and day different in relation to like your responsibilities and what's expected of you. And so yeah, that's something that you come out of residency or fellowship, and hopefully you feel like you're very well trained and you're ready to tackle the world. And so I was lucky to have, some pretty good confidence coming in. And I'd say the best thing is just having the support of people that I know and trust, to know, if I needed a hand with something, there will be no questions asked, and people will go out of their way to make sure things are going well. And then I've always loved teaching. I don't know what it's been along the way. I think it's just that kind of that light bulb you see in people's minds go off when it clicks, and it really sticks with them. And so it's such an amazing opportunity to train residents, and residents who are, happy and willing to learn things. And then students who come along the way too. So kind of figuring out, you kind of forget after a while what it's like to be a student, I feel like. So I always try to remember that and relate, my experiences to the process. So kind of coming to that level and making sure they feel good about, how they're learning and making sure they're involved. It's definitely a challenge. It's very different from training.
Yeah. Jeff, what was your experience? Because you had been out in practice for a while prior to becoming a residency director. What was that transition like for you?
No, I went to Kern back when Kern was rocking and rolling, like 100 attendings and 3 ORs running every day. So the whole educational experience with students, coming through as externs or clerks, and then we had residents, 6 per year, all from different schools. So really, we'd just get dumped into an environment of surgery and inquiry, and we did radiology rounds every single day before dinner, for example, and then you stayed after for lectures. So having that educational vibe was always there. And then when I moved to Denver, I was part of the PSL program early on, which it was Highlands back in the day. And then Denver got too big to have. They had a VA program, and they had Highlands, which became PSL. And a few of us got together and started the North Colorado program. So it was like I never took my foot out of the education bucket. It never felt like that. So I think what you said, Craig, it's kind of, part of you, and is so true. And I always find it interesting that some people get into education or residency training, or being part of a residency program, and some people don't. It's just fascinating. A lot of it's opportunity, I think. So for me, it's just then going into education was just another step along the way of helping our profession and helping our students prepare them for the best residency programs. So Craig, it just warms my heart, like when a student matches at San Francisco, Bay Area, Kaiser, or any of the great programs. So I just know that the training is so outstanding around the country. Their opportunities are immense. And Joe, it just makes all this educational opportunities and what we're doing for the students worthwhile.
Yeah, I absolutely can mirror that. And it is really interesting that transition of being a resident and then being in charge and in control of everything, but then also still training a resident in that process. What has your been, let's say, how am I wanting to state this question? What have you found is the most challenging part of navigating that transition?
Yeah, I think, kind of going back to what Jeff has said as well, it's always been a part of my journey in podiatry. So it's been a student paired with a resident paired with an attending, a fellow paired with an attending, and so all of a sudden it's gone, and you're just in clinic.
Yeah.
And so when we get back to like being on call or doing elective surgery days, it I think it's vital to be able to sit down and talk about things before you do them. You get to a point, especially in fellowship, where it's ingrained in your head. You're becoming like almost hyper efficient, and being able to kind of slow down and really just say, hey, do you know why I did that? Or, what's your thought process here before we even do it? I think that is the hardest part because life gets so busy. There's always 15 patient messages to get through and notes from the day before. If you're somebody like me who likes to do them the next day. So it's kind of a never-ending workflow. And you kind of have to embrace it, I feel like, and just say, okay, this has been so important for me teaching people and being taught that I need to carve out time for it and make sure that I'm able to do that for students and residents because it can look so different.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And I think that's a really important point, this idea of being mindful about when to slow down. It's funny, I was listening to a different podcast about this idea of like hyper efficiency, and we are all well-oiled machines to make our lives as efficient as possible. But there are certain things when that is actually very counterproductive. And they were talking about the kind of fiasco with the Suez Canal, and basically a gust of wind costs $50 billion because everything is so perfectly, efficiently, highly scheduled that any kink in the line throws everything off. And it was interesting because it was Dr. Brian Klaus was talking this idea that when there's a lot of uncertainty, we should not be prioritizing efficiency. We should be optimizing for flexibility, resilience, and adaptability. And I think from a physician standpoint, that was COVID for us, right? We are all programmed to be these highly efficient. Every minute in the OR is being tracked. Every minute in our clinics, we are, being highly productive with our time. That it translates into our personal lives too, which we can transition to in a second. But I'm curious as you have gone, because you started residency during the peak of the pandemic. So having that be the beginning of your experience into this world of residency, what are some things that you've learned about flexibility and adaptability and resilience in the time that you've been practicing?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And I think it does, my answer at least does tie in pretty sizably with personal life. I think especially if you're on a track where you see yourself really pushing yourself and challenging yourself and going to programs that are going to kind of put you to the limit. It's one of those things that you like I said, you'll always have work to do, but it's very hard at first to figure out when to shut that off. So I like what you're saying. I think hyper, efficiency, it's a bad thing. It's great for writing notes, but that's about the only thing I can think it's really good for because you lose out on so much. If you talk to people who've been doing it a long time, it's always, time is money, but I'd say more so people are looking at time spent with family. That's way more valuable. So when I first started out, it was still pretty busy, all things considered. So if people aren't as familiar with our residency program, the first year is almost entirely off service. And so not a lot of them skipped a beat with COVID. Certain ones were slower than others. We had a couple that were, kind of like off service outpatients. And so those were, hey, watch me, do a video chat for, a couple hours today. And that's kind of the extent of the day. But the rest of them were, kind of on the floors and still working. And so it's so overwhelming at first that you go home and you just don't really stop thinking about it. I came into residency married, and so it was a big adjustment for us where we had to think about, dinner time is now us time. That's kind of what we have. Or to this one thing today. Let's go on a walk. Let's do something to get away from it all because you can get so caught up in just doing and doing and doing, and it'll never end. There's just always something to be doing. So that was probably the biggest change for me. And to kind of coattail on that, it just got worse as life goes on. I've heard people say over the years, mentors say, when you're an attending, you wish you were a fellow. When you're a fellow, you wish you were a resident. When you're a resident, you wish you were a student. And it's so true because No offense to the students listening, but it would be very nice to go to a coffee shop and drink a good cup of coffee and just read a textbook. It sounds crazy, but that sounds amazing right now. It's like nirvana to us on this side now. And so, as you get more responsibility through your career, and you start doing more, it can become very difficult to set aside time for your hobbies, your family. And I think it's important to at least think about it early on. I think, you can disassociate, if you try. But I also, am one of these people. I think it is very important to work hard. And so you learn how to work hard when you're working hard and relax hard when you're relaxing hard. That's the way I look at it, at least.
Absolutely. Jeff, your thoughts?
Oh, I love it. It's funny, you caught onto that hyper efficiency just like I did. But if you think about it, it's better to be hyper efficient for short periods of time because you can't go hard 16 hours a day. You just can't. But if you're hyper efficient, you get what needs to be done. I find that to be preferable than a trickle mode where I'm just trying to be on all day long. And I think time management is so key because like you're saying, Craig, you're trying to, encompass times in your day where you have different priorities and family is top priority and your kids are top priority and, work has to get done. So I think everybody's different. Some people are morning people, some people are evening people, and it's so unique to each of us. But I love the term hyper efficiency. It sounds like a new self-help group,
Right.
Well, and so one of the things that I also appreciated in this discussion that he was having is, when uncertainty is not the outcome, essentially, then hyper efficiency is fabulous, right? Like, so for an OR, for example, we know what the outcome is. You want everything to be as efficient as possible so that everyone performs well, patient outcomes are maximized. Excellent, right? But the other thing that he brought up that I thought was really interesting, and this ties back to what you were saying, Craig, about kind of the personal aspect of it, is he talked about the Moneyball, like how baseball started to optimize for performance and outcome. Again, the outcome is to win the game. And so they optimized for that. And what they found is they got very good at figuring it out, but they lost fans because we're not actually trying to optimize for winning the game. What we're optimizing for is experience and enjoyment and the thrill of the unpredictable part of baseball. And so again, it was it made me think back, and I'll switch my eye language now. It made me think about periods of my life where I have tried to optimize in places of uncertainty or for the wrong reason, and how frustrated and how much it impacted everything in my life, versus when I had found ways to optimize for efficiency in the places where those outcomes were more determined and predictable, how much joy and benefit it provided. And so I'm curious, Craig, as you had commented on that about some of the personal stuff, is this something that resonates with you in terms of looking at kind of what the goals are of what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think early on, and still for me now, it's fairly easy to have goals, right? Because it's, you're in undergrad, and then I figure out I'm going to podiatry school. So, you're studying for the MCAT, then you're in podiatry school, and you're looking forward to externships. So you're preparing for externships. There's always that next goal in our field. And luckily, I do have goals as I've come out of fellowship. So that's good, I think, to keep having goals and reinventing yourself. So I think, I love what you were talking about. I think the thing that isn't talked enough about is kind of like reflection. Like when you hit a checkpoint, pump the brakes, reevaluate, don't dwell on your laurels, but also like appreciate how far you've come. I mean, I don't have a medicine background, so I remember very vividly my first day scrubbing in, and like my thumb went straight through the gown, and I was like, oh no, what do I do now? So it's one of those things that like you just can sit back and reflect on how far you've come. I think that is so powerful because it kind of, like you said, it can keep you in good spirits. It can keep things kind of light and just be like, wow, I've done all this stuff, and this has been, this has been my journey. And so I totally agree, though, when you're talking about, if you put too much emphasis on certain parts of your life for the wrong reason, or for a reason you think is right, and you stop to think, why am I so irritated when I come into work today? What is going on in my life that is bugging me? You can almost always relate it to that. Like I've been trying to do the same thing so many times and it's not working. Okay, let's pivot. So I really like that idea of reflecting on all that.
And I'm not to totally put you on the spot, but on your CV, with some of the things that I found really interesting is you have a lot of different life experiences that kind of lend itself to this narrative of discussing. And then you actually highlighted that self-improvement was something in there, along with other fun things like photography and woodworking, which I could see both of those coming into play as a surgeon. Can you talk a little bit about some of the fun hobbies that you have and how that influences or brings joy to your life?
Yeah, my wife tends to think I have too many hobbies, but I'm hoping that just keeps me up through the years, just always being interested in things. And I'm starting to focus on hobbies a little bit more and get more into their worlds. Mostly because I can afford some of them now, thankfully. Where I've always wanted to do this, I've always wanted to do this, and now I can, finally do some of them. So it's been really fun. But I think it's such an amazing feeling when you find something you're interested in, and then you just start pursuing it. And I was actually thinking today about some things that might be, good to talk about. I remember when I was, a student, I knew kind of what I wanted to do in this field pretty early on. Like the reason I ended up coming to Kaiser San Francisco is because I read Schubert's articles and experiences like that where it's like, why do I keep seeing this name over and over again? I need to figure out where this is and who it is. And so you start looking into it. And I think for me in the medical field, and especially when I'm trying to teach, I tell students, sure, you should be prepared for cases, but I would rather you read about something you're interested in for 2 hours before a surgery that's completely unrelated because you're going to care about it. You're going to know about it. You're going to go out of your way to read different articles and see what's at the forefront. And that could become your niche. That could become what you care about the most. Mm. And that's how I kind of feel about hobbies too. It's if I have even the slightest interest in it, then I will go kind of pursue that thing. And I think that's why my wife jokes that I have too many hobbies because I'm interested in a lot of things, and it's kind of like flavor of the month, and then I go back and kind of revisit some of them. But for me, most of them come back to like a creativity outlet and a building outlet. So I like to fix stuff, obviously, being in this world, and then I also find like photography to be so creative. It's just like life through your lens. And so I started doing photography when we moved out to kind of the Bay Area, did a cross country road trip from Ohio to San Francisco. So it's an amazing time to take pictures and go to national parks and just explore the world. And so that to me was like capturing a moment, and looking back on it was like, it was very powerful for me. It just becomes a journal for yourself. I don't find time usually to sit down and write about things, but on my trips, I'll take a bunch of pictures and I'll be able to put them in an album or print them out or do whatever I want with them. So yeah, that's the brief on my hobbies. I like to find an outlet to, explore myself and also build things.
I love that.
Me too.
It's a good
I like the combo of cooking and sourdough bread.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
they go together well.
Perfect segue to our rapid fire, maybe.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
You want to go first?
I will go first. It said you're an avid runner. Have you gotten into any of the trail running in the Bay Area?
Yeah, a lot of trail running. I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback dog. She's a becoming dog. And so trail running and Rhodesian Ridgebacks kind of go hand in hand. So I live out in Walnut Creek now, so it's kind of like East Bay there's mountains and a lot of hills. So there's a lot of off-leash dog running. So yeah, I love running with the dog.
Oh, that's fabulous. So Joe, my first question was compare and contrast Bay Area versus Phoenix for the podiatry scene.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's night and day and also not. So I'd say Bay Area and Phoenix, the most stark contrast obviously is going to be the weather. So I lived in San Francisco and when my friends would come out to visit from Ohio, shorts and a t-shirt, even though I told them many times, bring hoodies, bring jackets. And then in Phoenix, obviously it's you dread getting out or in your car. Both of those are not a good time usually. But I'll say culturally, it's very similar in that they're so diverse. And I'm a big foodie, so both have amazing food. I can't say one's better than the other.
That's
Phoenix
very
wasn't always
political.
as good. Yeah, it wasn't
That's,
always as good for food.
yeah. I like your political answer though.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll stay right in the middle there.
There you go.
Well,
Yeah.
staying on the topic of food, so you said you're a chef or you like to cook. Night, you and your wife are going to cook a meal. What are you going to cook?
Yeah, if it's a weeknight, it's going to be like an Asian noodle dish. I've completely fallen in love with Asian food being in the Bay Area. And then on the weekends, I like to like smoke things. So I've done like chicken wings and ribs and chicken and all that stuff. So it depends how much time I have, but something Asian usually.
I love it.
So Craig, you said you're a Cleveland sports fan, long-suffering fan in many sports. Where are we going at the draft this year? I heard Cleveland might be drafting a quarterback.
Yeah, it's unclear to me, honestly. We've all we've had. I mean, it's funny that we tend to completely forget about the season before and act like it's going to be different. I mean, I've been doing it for like 30 years now, and so I don't know that it's going to change. I'm starting to become wise to know that.
So then the next question, obvious lead on is, are you like a Niner fan now, or did you gravitate to Cardinals?
Still just embrace the Browns.
There you go.
In recent years, it's been easier to be a Guardians fan. So
good point.
That's what I've held.
Very good.
All right, music in the OR. What you listening to? Now that you get to pick.
I'm pretty well known for having a lot of playlists in the OR. I have if I have 5 cases, it's going to be 5 different genres. I get kind of bored with the same thing all day, so I have like a house music, I have a hip hop, I have a country, but I'd say it's usually going to be country or like a house music.
That is very interesting and not at all what I kind of was thinking about for you. Interesting. All right, your turn, Jeff.
So you mentioned woodworking as being a hobby. What kind of woodworking? What have you made in recent times?
It started as like kind of functional, where it was like, why do I have to pay this much? Why do I have to pay so much for a coffee table? And so then I would look on the internet for blueprints to make a coffee table. So usually it's functional. Like moving into our place here, we have a fireplace, and it's just a fireplace. There's no hearth, there's no mantle or anything. So I built a mantle. That's the last thing I built.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do we have time for one more, Jeff?
Let's go for it. One more.
All right. Favorite place you've ever traveled and why?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I'd probably have to say Colombia, because it was one of the most unique trips I've ever had. I had a buddy I ran track with in college, met a fine lady from Colombia who he ended up marrying, and they kind of made this huge itinerary over 10 days. And so we went to kind of like the ocean side and then into the mountaintops. And that was a eye-opening experience all around. Beautiful country.
Incredible. Yeah.
I have one more for you. Big vacation coming up this summer. Where are you going to go?
Well, I actually am going to Japan in May. So that is our big vacation and
There you
5-year
go.
wedding. So that's our trip. We're going to Japan.
So where are you going to go?
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're kind of going all over the place. We have a friend who is a military pilot stationed in Iwakuni, so it's kind of like on the more kind of southern side. But then we'll go to kind of like we've never been to Asia, so it's going to be kind of like a classic Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka trip.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it. But to answer your question, it's usually somewhere new.
Right. I've been to Japan, the bullet trains. It was the first time I ever went like a week without using normal utensils. Chopsticks for everything was great. You were going to have so much fun.
Awesome.
Lots of good photography options.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's a good question. Hey, Craig, question for you. With the iPhone capabilities today, what is the uniqueness in photography? Do you have your own cameras? Do you have different setups? I mean, I mean, what is the essence of photography with the advancement in iPhones and things?
Yeah, there's so
Is that
many different types of photography, which I didn't really appreciate early on. And I'd say I'm more of like in the street photography slash like, I guess, biography photography where I just kind of am documenting things. And so for me, it's just so much more interactive to have a camera that you go out of your way to frame a picture or an experience versus, oh, that's cool, click, and then you put it back in your pocket.
right?
And I do both, but the experience is so different. And it's interesting if you read about anything in the photography world. So many people are going to like the film world where you only get so many shots. It's about the experience of doing it and the experience of developing the film. Where it's like the disposable camera. I hope I have a couple good shots. So it's
Right.
it's the experience is really fun.
You've got enough hobbies to keep you busy. Your wife's probably right.
Yeah, I agree.
That's great. Joe, anything at the end? Any last words?
No, thank you so much, Craig, for coming on to share with our audience what your experience has been like. We actually might have to have you on as a separate panel. We didn't even really get to touch on too much of like all the fellowship questions that we'll get often from students. But thank you so much. There was too many other interesting things from the coaching and the just so many life things that were really fun to talk with you about. So thank you again for your time today.
Yeah, no worries. I really appreciate you guys having me. And I'd say that's kind of what defines me a lot of the time anyways, is kind of the weird, quirky things that I've gotten into over the years and all the different experiences. So I've come to really embrace those and just keep seeking them out because you just meet so many amazing people. Doing this podcast, it's being connected with people. And so happy to talk with anyone. I'm happy to come on whenever. So let me know what you need.
Well, thank you, Craig. And I speak for Joe. We're looking forward to following your career for sure. And I know our students will enjoy rotating as clerks out there with all of you. Thank you for all you do on that front also.
Sure, no problem. Happy to have everybody.
All right, everyone. Well, if you're listening on Spotify or if you're listening on Apple, please give us a 5-star rating or even leave a couple comments. And if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, become a subscriber. Joe and I will continue to bring young leaders in our profession, students, residency directors, everybody that's interesting. We're trying to get on Dean's Chat. And so we'll continue to do that. And also, Craig, we're going to send you a Dean's Chat mug. We've got a little mug here. It'll keep you going. I mean, there's lots of different options in the Bay Area for coffee and tea and things. So keep you hydrated. And so, what's that?
Tag you on Instagram.
You can put them on Instagram. You can put them on anywhere you want. Absolutely. And so we'll get that out to you. And thanks again. And till next week, everybody. Cheers.